Welcome to the complete MySQL Bootcamp, from SQL beginner to expert. Are you interested in learning SQL and working with databases and data analysis? Do you want to strengthen your resume and find a better job? Do you want to learn the most in-demand skill used by tech giants like Google, YouTube, Amazon, PayPal, and others? Then this is the perfect course for you. Whether you're a marketing analyst, business analyst, data science specialist, web developer, iOS developer, or any of these other professions, we will help you gain the skills to be successful in the market for many years to come. No prior programming experience is necessary because we will take you step by step through everything there is to know about SQL, all the way from beginner to expert. Our support staff will be with you every step of the way, ready to answer all your questions. This is what your lessons look like. Firstly, all theory will be explained on slides like these. After you get the concept, we show you how it works in practice. In addition, this course is packed with lots of exercises to effectively practice and actually use SQL. SQL language can be used on different databases such as MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQLite, and many others. In this course, we will be working with MySQL database, but the knowledge gained here can be applied to virtually every other database. At the end of the course, you will get a certificate which can be added to LinkedIn. What's more, you'll have a 30-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. So, what are you waiting for? Enroll today. Your future starts now. SQL was originally called SQL. Due to a legal challenge, the name was changed to the abbreviation SQL. And that's why some people pronounce it as SQL, while others say SQL. Nowadays, it's a matter of preference. Moreover, in the USA, for example, you are more likely to hear SQL, while in European countries, you are more likely to hear it as SQL. The same story with MySQL. You can pronounce it as MySQL or as MySQL, because even Microsoft mentions in the official documentation that we do not mind if you pronounce it as MySQL or in some other localized way. We will find out the difference between SQL and MySQL. Of course, it will be more clear when we start working with databases and tables. But for now, you just need to understand that SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So it is a language. And with the help of the SQL language, we can interact with different databases. On the slide, you see the most popular SQL databases. They are MySQL, SQLite, PostgreSQL, and so on. So why do we need databases and the SQL language? Well, let's suppose that we have an e-commerce website. In this case, we need to have a database where we could store all information on our products and customers. So for this purpose, we can use one of these SQL databases. Or another example, for instance, you have a blog with lots of different posts and comments to these posts. To store these posts and comments, you need to use a database. So with the help of databases, you store the data. And with the help of the SQL language, we interact with the database. We just need to send a special command to our database, which is called a SQL query. And in response, we will get the necessary information from our database. So that's what we're going to learn in this course, how to write SQL queries. And in this course, we will be working with MySQL database, which is extremely popular. Another thing that I would like to mention is that there are some differences between the 7 databases you see on the screen. So most things that we will learn in this course can be applied to all these databases. But still, there are some small differences. It's the same story as with a human language. In some regions, the same language can have dialects. Finally, I would like to mention that when someone talks about SQL and MySQL, you can hear the abbreviation RDBMS. RDBMS stands for Relational Database Management System. Well, In MySQL, we can store not one, but many databases. For example, 3 databases. In fact, MySQL is RDBMS because it is not just static databases. These are databases with a special software environment that allows us to interact with the databases to update, add, or delete some information in the databases, and so on. For example, PostgreSQL is also RDBMS as well as the other databases you saw on the slide. To start learning SQL, we need to install 2 programs, MySQL Server and MySQL Workbench. Please be prepared that this lesson is not the funniest lesson in the unit, as we will be clicking and clicking the same buttons so many times. So now that you know this, let's get ready to do this. Let's install both MySQL Server and MySQL Workbench. We open our browser and we search for MySQL. Click on the first link and then click on Downloads. After that, we click on Community. Here's the link to download MySQL Community Server. And if we scroll down a bit, here's another link that we're going to use to download MySQL Workbench. Let's start with MySQL Community Server. Click on this link. Then we scroll down a bit, and here we need to select the operating system. In our case, it is Mac OS. Then we need to download DMG Archive. So we click on this button. After that, we click on No thanks, just start my download. Now we need to wait for some period of time. Well, to save some time, while the file is downloading, let's download MySQL Workbench. So we go back to Downloads, then Community, and we click on the link MySQL Workbench. Again, we scroll down a bit, and here we click on the Download button. Now click on No thanks, just start my download. As you can see, the 2 files are still downloading. So you have some time to grab a sandwich and a cup of coffee, as this will take 5 to 6 minutes. Perfect. The files have already been downloaded. Okay. At first, let's install MySQL Community Server. To do this, we click here. And then double-click on this file. After that, click on Continue. Now click on this Continue button. And again, we need to click on another Continue button. This time we click on the Agree button. After that, click on Install. Here, type in your password. Then we click on Next. Now we need to create a password for the MySQL Server user. Click on Finish. And again, we need to type in our password. Just wait a bit. And after that, click on Close. Click on Move to Trash. My congratulations! MySQL Server has been successfully installed. Alright, now let's install MySQL Workbench. To do this, we click on this file. Just drag and drop this file to the Applications folder. Okay, done. Now let's open MySQL Workbench. So we click on Open, and there, we see the welcome page of MySQL Workbench. So now we have installed everything we need to start learning SQL. let's install both MySQL Server and MySQL Workbench. We open our browser and we search for MySQL. Click on the first link and then click on Downloads. After that, click on Windows. Now, make another click on MySQL Installer. Scroll down a bit, and here we choose Microsoft Windows. Right here we select the second row with 394.3 megabytes. Click on the Download button. Scroll down a bit and click on No thanks, just start my download. Then we wait a few seconds. There. Now click on the file. And again, we need to wait a bit. To accept the license terms, we need to put a tick right here. Then click on Next. We need Developer Default to be selected. Now click on Next. Then we again click on Next. And after that, click on the Yes button. Then click on Execute. The following products which you see on the screen will be installed, so we need to wait several seconds. As you can see, among the products that are being installed, we see MySQL Server and MySQL Workbench. Since all products have been installed, we should click on the Next button. Then click on Next a second time. Now we click on the Next button a third time, and again we click on another Next button. Now we need to create a password that we will use every time we need to log into MySQL. Then in the second field we repeat this password. After that, click on Next. Here we need to uncheck Start the MySQL Server at System Startup. And we click on Next. Then we click on Execute. And after that, click on Finish. Then click on another Next button. And after that, click on another Finish button. And again, we need to click the Next button. Now, in this field, we type in our password. Then click on Check. We see the message Connection succeeded, which is what we need. So now we click on the Next button, and then we click on Execute. After that, click on Finish, and again, we need to click the Next button. Here we uncheck Start MySQL Shell after setup. And finally, we click on Finish. My congratulations, we did it! Now we have everything we need to start learning SQL. Open the terminal, and then we need to take several steps. The first step is to execute the command sudo apt update. Then type in your password. Okay, done. The second step is to execute the command sudo apt install MySQL Server. After that, press the Y key on the keyboard, and then we press Enter. And now we need to wait a bit while MySQL Server is downloading and installing. The next thing we need to do is create a new password for MySQL root user. Alright, we type in the new password. Then we type in the password for the second time. So the installation is still in process. Okay, done. The third step is to work on the basic security settings of MySQL. To do this, we type in the command sudo MySQL secure installation. After that, hit Enter. Now we type in our password. Then here we press the N key. And then here we press the letter N a second time. Right here we press the Y key. After that we press the letter Y a second time. Then we press the letter Y a third time. And finally, we press the letter Y a fourth time. Excellent. Now MySQL Server is properly installed. The next thing we're going to do is install MySQL Workbench. MySQL Workbench is a program in which we're going to write SQL queries. To install this program, we type in sudo apt install MySQL Workbench. Now hit enter. After that, press the Y key on the keyboard. And we need to wait a bit because MySQL Workbench is installing. Perfect. MySQL Workbench has been downloaded and successfully installed. Now, to open this program, we type in MySQL Workbench. Then hit enter. And there. So in each lesson of this course, we will be working with MySQL Workbench. Let's see how information actually gets stored on MySQL. First, MySQL consists of databases. For example, Database 1, Database 2, and Database 3. Secondly, the information in each database is stored in tabulated form. For example, in the first database we have 3 tables, in the second one 5 tables, and in the third one 2 tables. Good. Now you know that MySQL consists of databases, which in turn consist of tables. So that's why we're first going to learn how to create databases, and then we'll also learn how to create tables. Alright, let's create our first database. So we open MySQL Workbench. Then, when the program is open, we click on Local Instance. After that, we type in our password. And now we're going to check whether the MySQL server works. Well, to do this, we click Startup Shutdown, and we see the word running in green. That means that our server works. In case you see the word stopped in red instead of the word running, then you would see the Start Server button, which you have to click to start the server. Okay, let's close this tab. This part of the interface is the text editor, where we're going to type the commands for the server. So first, to create a database, you need to write a command using SQL language. In SQL, all commands are called SQL queries. And in order to create a database, we need to execute the SQL query create database followed by the name of the database. For example, let's call our database website. You can give it any name you want, but keep in mind that we need to add a semicolon at the end. Okay, let's create this database. So we type in create database and then the name of the database. Please note that we wrote create database in all caps. You could write it in lowercase letters and it would still work, but it is customary to write this and other SQL commands in capital letters. Also, if we wrote it with a mistake, so for example databases in plural, then MySQL Workbench underlines the word in red to show that there is an error. If there are no errors, no words are underlined in red. Now, to run this command, we need to click on this lightning icon. Congratulations! We created a database called website. But how do we know for sure that the database was indeed created? Where can we see it? For that we can write show databases. Please note that there is a letter S at the end. Again, we write it in all caps because that's the customary way to do it. After show databases, we need to add a semicolon. This command will show us all created databases. So instead of this command, we write show databases. Then click the lightning icon. Here below, we see that the command was successfully executed. And here's the list of all databases. As we can see, the database website, which we created earlier, is indeed on the list. All other databases were created by default because they are required for the correct functioning of MySQL Workbench. Good. You already know how to create databases and how to get a list of already created databases. So, in the next video, we will learn how to create tables in a database. In the previous videos, we learned how to create databases, and we created a database called website. Also, we learned how to get the list of available databases. So it is time to learn how to create tables. It is also very easy. Before we learn how to create a table, let's revise the components of which a table consists. Any table consists of columns and rows. On the screen you can see a table which stores information about website users and has 4 columns and 3 rows. Each column has its own name. ID stores the user's unique number. First name is a column which stores the name of a user. Last name is a column with the user's last name, and also there is a column called email with the user's email. As you can see, we have 3 rows. In the first row, the user's ID is 1, his first name is James, his last name Davis, and the email is jdavis@gmail.com. Also, as you can see, each column stores a certain type of information. ID stores numbers, first name, last name, and email store text. Okay, so to create this table, we need to take 3 steps. The first step is to indicate which database we want to apply our commands to. So the first command is use website. Now, MySQL will understand that we want to work with a database called website. The second step is to create all necessary fields, meaning ID, first name, last name, and email. To do this, we run the command create table. So at first comes the command create table. Then we specify the name of the table, and after that, in the parentheses, we add the names of the columns and which type of information each column stores. So in SQL language, one column can contain only one type of information. There are lots of different data types, but on the screen you only see some popular data types which are used in SQL. Let's talk about them in detail. The first data type is called tinyInt. This type is used to store very small integers. The maximum possible number is 255. Also, here we see parentheses where we should indicate the maximum number we wish. So it can be any number which is less than or equal to 255. Let's suppose we wrote the number 150 in the parentheses. Then we can store any integer number in the column which is equal or less than 150. For instance, 80 or 149. The second type is called int. This type is used to store integers. It has a range which you can see on the screen, from 0 to roughly 4.5 billion. If you also want to store negative numbers, there is another variation which ranges from roughly -2 billion to roughly +2 billion. The next type is called double. This type is used to store any decimal fraction, for example 1.5. The next type is varchar. This type is used to store small text up to 255 characters. Varchar can be used to store first names, last names, and emails of users. Again, in the parentheses, we specify what the maximum number of characters is that can be stored in this column. The next type is text. As varchar, text is used to store text. However, text stores big text, for example an article or even a small book. Type date stores, which is clear from its name, dates in the format of year, month, day. Year, month, and day are divided by a hyphen. As I have already said, there are many more data types than what you see on the screen. So to see all the SQL data types, just go to the official website dev.mysql.com. Then click on MySQL documentation, and after that we choose MySQL Reference Manual and MySQL 8.0. Now click Data Types. On this page, all data types are divided into separate groups. For instance, for numbers we select numeric types. And then we should choose, for example, integer types. And there, we've got all possible data types for integers with maximum and minimum values which we can store in columns. Good. Now we can move on to the creation of a table. We simply write create table, followed by the name of the table, for example stuff. Then we open the parentheses, and in the parentheses we write id int, where id is the name of the column and int is the type of information which will be stored in this column. After that we write a comma, and again we write the name of the second column, which is first name, and also the data type varchar 50, which means that the values of this column can store no more than 50 characters. After that we add two more columns, which are last name and email. And at the end we close the parentheses and we add a semicolon. So when we execute this command, an empty table will be created with the columns ID, first name, last name and email. And how do we create rows? Well, this is the third step. To do this we need to write a SQL entry, insert into. Then we write the name of the table to which we want to add the row. After that, in the parentheses we write the names of the columns to which we will add information. So this is the first part of the command. And the second part is to write the keyword values. And in the parentheses we write what we want to place in these columns. The order of the values needs to be exactly as the order in which the columns were specified. So to add a row about a user, we write insert into and then the name of the table. In our case it's stuff. In the parentheses we specify that we want to add information for the columns ID, first name, last name and email. Then in values we add which values we want to add. ID1, first name James, last name Davis and email jdavis@gmail.com. And as a result, the row will be added to the table. Now to add the second row, we write another command but with different values. And as you can see, the second row was added to the table. Again, to add the third row to the table, we write the third command. Okay, let's see how it works in practice. So we open MySQL Workbench. Then we need to connect. At first, let's see which databases we have so far. Okay, here's the database we need, which is called website. Now we write that we're going to use the website database. Then we write that we want to create a table, and we give it the name stuff. Now in the parentheses we specify which columns we need. So the first column is ID with the data type int. The second column is first name with the data type varchar with the maximum value of 50 characters. The third column is last name with varchar 50 as well. And finally the fourth column, email, also varchar 50. Now to execute these commands, we click the lightning icon. As a result, at the bottom we see these green check signs. So this means that the commands use website and create table have been successfully executed. Now to see all the databases, we're going to execute the command show databases. And here's our website database but we don't see any tables. So how can we see the table? Well, we need to replace the command show databases with the command show tables. And run the command. So we see that the table staff has been created. Now, let's fill this table with the information. We type in insert into the table staff. In the parentheses, we add which columns we want to be added. In our example, they are ID, first name, last name, and email. And we specify the values for these columns. So for the first user, we're going to add this data. Please note that text information has to be wrapped in single quotes. Alright, let's execute the command. And we see that the command worked fine. Now, let's add the next row to the table with the information about Mary. Okay, the command has been executed. And finally, we're going to add the data on the user Michael Smith. Now run the command. Okay, done. Excellent. Alright, let's summarize everything we learned during today's lesson. To create a database, we write create database and then the name of the database. To browse through already created databases, we write show databases. To select a certain database, we write use and then the name of the database. To create a table, we write create table, then the name of the table, and then in parentheses, we write the names of the columns of the table, one by one, separated by commas. To add a new row with the information about James Davis, we wrote insert into, then the name of the table to which we added a new row, and we specified which values we wanted to add. Then we applied the same approach for Mary Johnson and Michael Smith. Alright, that's it for this lesson. See you in the next one. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and find the full version of this course by following the link below this video. In the previous lesson, we inserted 3 rows with information about James, Mary, and Michael to the table called Stuff. I'm just reminding you that to insert these 3 rows, we use the command insert into 3 times, which you see on the screen right now. Well, there is another way to do this. First, you need to write insert into, then the name of the table, which is Stuff, and in the parentheses, we specify the names of the columns where the data has to be added. So far, everything is absolutely the same as we did it before. Second, to insert the first row, in the parentheses, we need to write all the necessary values for the first row. Please notice that at the end of the row, we need to set not a semicolon, but a comma. Then, again in the parentheses, we specify all values for the second row. And at the end of the row, we need to set a comma. After that, in the parentheses, we add all values for the third row. Since it is the last row which we want to add, at the end we add a semicolon. So only for the last row, we set a semicolon. As you can see, now we have only one insert into command. but with the help of it, we can insert 3 rows at once. Well, this format of the insert into command has its pros and cons. The main advantage is that the command is much shorter. But the first disadvantage is that when we use this format of the insert into command, we must specify all values of every column. We can't skip any of the values. So if, for example, for Michael Smith, we had decided not to specify his last name, with this format, that wouldn't have been possible. The second disadvantage is that if we, by mistake, said here not a comma but a semicolon, we would get an error message from MySQL Workbench. Okay, in this course, in most cases, we're going to use the first format of the insert into command. But if you like the second way I just showed you, feel free to use it. That's all for this lesson. See you in the next one. So we got this table with 3 employees, James, Mary, and Michael. So we have added information for all 4 columns: ID, first name, last name, and email. Now let's suppose we want to add a new user, but we don't have all information about him. So what if we wrote it like this? Insert into staff and 3 columns: ID, first name, and email. As you can see, we skipped the column last name. And as the values, we want to insert the number 6 for ID, Tom as the first name, and then his email. So if we execute the command written this way, we'll get this result. Please notice that the value null has been added to the column last name. Since we didn't add any value for this column, the null value was set by default. Okay, let's add the employee Tom to our database. To do this, we type in insert into staff. Then we specify that the data which has to be inserted into the column is ID, first name, and email. After that, we add which values have to be added. So the number 6 for ID, Tom as the first name, and for email, tomtommy@gmail.com. I'm just reminding you that all text data has to be wrapped in single quotes. Now, let's execute the command. And we see an error, because here we see a red sign with an X. And the error message is no database selected. Why is that? Because before inserting any information to a table, we have to specify where the table is stored. So to fix that, we add the command use website. We already know this command from the previous lessons. Okay, run the command. And this time we see that both commands have been executed successfully. In this lesson, we will learn how to get the necessary information from the already created table. So we can do it with the help of the command select from. At first we have to write select, and then we specify the values of which columns we want to get. And then we write the word from and the name of the table from which this data has to be taken. Let's imagine that we need to get all first names which are stored in our table. So what do? We have to write select first name from staff. As a result, we will get all first names which are stored in the staff table. Okay, let's see how it works in practice. We type in use website so that MySQL could understand that we need information from the website database. Then we add select first name from the table called staff. Let's check it out. And we've got the list of names: James, Mary, Michael, and Tom. So everything works fine. Excellent. And what if we want to select 2 columns at the same time? For example, we want to get the information from the following columns of the table: first name and last name. We need to do the same as we did in the previous example. We write select first name, then add a comma and write last name. After that we add from and the name of the table. In our case we write staff. Again, we need to add the semicolon. As a result, we'll get data from two columns simultaneously. Alright, let's check it out. Right here, after first name, we add last name and run the command. This time we've got two columns, first name and last name. And for Tom, the last name value is null, because in the previous lesson we didn't specify his last name. And what if we want to get information from all columns of the table, meaning all available information from the table? To do this, we write the command select, then we add an asterisk. This way, we specify that we need all available information from the table, and then we write from and the name of the table, staff. As always, let's see how it works in practice. Let's replace first name and last name with an asterisk. Perfect. We've got the whole table: ID, first name, last name, and email. Congratulations! Now you know how to use the select command. See you in the following video lesson. So it's time for practice. We are going to work with vegetables. Firstly, try to solve this task by yourself, and in the next lesson you will find the solution. So, let's begin. Firstly, you need to create a database called store. Then, inside of the database, you create a table called vegetables. This table must have three columns called name, weight, and price. The first column, called name, must have no more than 50 characters. The column called weight needs to have integer numbers. And the column called price must have double numbers. The last thing that you need to do is fill in the table with values. In the first row there has to be onion with weight 200 and price $1.93. In the second row there has to be potato, the weight is 1000 and the price is $2.40. Finally, in the last row there has to be tomato with weight 400 and the price of $3.95. Okay, good luck and see you in the next video where I will show you the solution to this task. Firstly, we need to create a database called store. So we open MySQL Workbench. Then, to create a database, we type in create database and call the database store. Execute the SQL query. As we can see, the SQL query was successfully executed. Secondly, to create a table in this database, we need to specify that we're going to use this database. To do this, we type in use store. According to the task, we have to create a table called vegetables. Therefore, we type in create table vegetables. Now we need to specify which columns have to be in this table. The first column is called name. So we type in the word name. This column has a limitation, no more than 50 characters. That's why we add the data type varchar 50. The second column is called weight, and it has to store integer numbers. So we type in weight and the data type int. The third column is called price, and it has to store double numbers. So price and the data type is double. Now execute these SQL queries. The commands were executed successfully. The next thing we need to do is add the names of the vegetables. They are onion, potato, and tomato. Let's start with onion. The weight has to be 200 and the price is 193. To fill in the first row of the table, we type in insert into the table called vegetables. Then we specify that we're going to add values for the columns called name, weight, and price. Then we also specify which values have to be set. The names of the vegetables are text information. That's why we add a pair of single quotes and inside of them we type onion. The weight has to be 200 and the price is 193. Now we need to add information on potato and tomato. To do this, we copy this SQL query and paste it twice below. Here we replace onion with potato. Then we replace 200 with 1000, and the price has to be 2.4. Finally, here we change to tomato. 400 for the weight, and the price is $3.95. Let's execute these SQL queries. Again, we see that all commands were successful, which is wonderful. Alright, let's display the whole table. We type in select all from vegetables. Then execute the query. Excellent! We get the table with all the necessary information. So the task is completed. Hey, I'm just reminding you that you can find the full version of the course by following the link below the video. Have fun! We already know that if we want to get all the information which is stored in a table, we have to type the command select all from and then the table name. But what if we only want to get the information from the rows which have the first name James? To do this, we need to write select all from table name where and then the condition. So in our case, our condition is first name equals James. As a result, we get two rows, one for James Davis and one for James Baker. Now let's see how it works in practice. So we type select all from staff where first name equals James. Then we run this SQL query, and we get our two rows of employees who have James as their first name. In our example with the two James employees, we wrote a condition using an equal sign. We call that an equal operator. But it's not the only operator in SQL. There are many others. In this video lesson, we're going to focus on the first 6 operators. And in the next video lesson, we're going to learn the rest of them. We already know the first operator, the equal operator. Now we're going to move on to the second operator, the greater than operator. Let's imagine we want to get all the rows with an ID number greater than 3. In our case, the only employees who match that condition are Tom and James. To get this information, we have to write select all from staff where ID is greater than 3. And we get the 2 rows we expected. Now let's see how it works in practice. We make changes to the current SQL query. We replace first name equals James with ID greater than 3. And we get our results, Tom and James. The third operator is the less than operator. This time we're going to select all the rows with an ID number less than 3. As you can see, only James and Mary match this condition. So now, let's make changes to the SQL query. We change the greater than symbol to the less than symbol. and we get James and Mary. In neither of the examples did we get Michael as a result. In order to include Michael this time, let's use the greater than or equal to operator. To do this, we need to write ID greater than or equal to 3 as the condition. And we get the rows for Michael, Tom, and James. And let's do it in practice. For the condition, we write ID greater than or equal to 3. And here are the results: Michael, Tom, and James. As you may have already guessed, if you want to get all the rows with an ID number less than or equal to 3, you write ID less than or equal to 3. We change the greater than symbol to the less than symbol. And here we have James, Mary, and Michael. The last operator we're going to learn in this lesson is the not equal to operator. This operator has two forms. You can write it either as exclamation mark equal sign or as a pair of angle brackets. So if we select all the rows which don't equal ID number 3, it means we will be selecting all the rows that you see highlighted on the screen. One way to do this is to write select all from staff where ID exclamation mark equals 3. The other way to do this is to write select all from staff where ID, a pair of angle brackets, 3. Let's see how it works in practice. We change the condition to ID exclamation mark equal sign. And we get James, Mary, Tom, and James. Great. Now, let's try the other form of this operator. We change this part to a pair of angle brackets 3. As you see, nothing's changed. And that's what we wanted. Now we're going to learn the operators which you see highlighted on the screen. Let's start with the between operator. This operator is used to select rows with an ID number within a certain range. Suppose we want to get all the rows with ID numbers in the range 2 to 4. That means we will get the rows which are highlighted. To get these rows, we need to write this SQL query. Select all from staff, where ID between, and then we write the minimum number, which is 2, and the maximum number, which is 4. As a result, we get rows for Mary, Michael, and James. Let's see how it works in practice. We write select all from staff, where ID between 2 and 4. Great, we got the results we expected. Mary, Michael, and James with ID numbers 2, 3, and 4. Now what will happen if we change between 2 and 4 to between 4 and 2? Uh-oh, we got no results, because the minimum number is larger than the maximum number. When you use the between operator, it's really important that the first number is smaller than the second number. Now we're going to learn the in and not in operators. To choose all the rows which have the first name as either James or Mary, we need to write select all from staff, where first name in, and then all the names we're looking for. In our case, those are James and Mary. When we run this SQL query, we get this result: 3 rows where James Davis has ID number 1, Mary Johnson ID number 2, and James Baker ID number 4. Let's see how it works in practice. For the condition, we write where first name in, and then in parentheses, we specify Mary and James. Great, we got 3 rows: James, Mary, and another James. And what if we want to select all the rows which don't have James or Mary as a first name? We write select all from staff, where first name not in, and in the parentheses we specify which name should not be selected. We get these two rows with information about Michael and Tom. And now, in practice, we change in to not in. And this time, we get only two rows, Michael and Tom. The next operators are called like and not like. Suppose we want to get all the rows which have a Gmail address. That means we will get the rows you see highlighted, James and Tom. To do this, we have to use the like operator. We specified that we want to include all rows that have an email which ends with gmail.com. We don't care what comes before gmail.com, just as long as it includes gmail.com. In order to make that possible, we have to use wildcards. Wildcards help us set rules for selecting data. There are two types of wildcards, the percentage sign and the underscore sign. If we write the SQL query, select all from staff, where email like %sign gmail.com, then the %sign specifies that the number of characters before gmail.com can be any length. So if we do this, we get two rows as a result. One with jdavis@gmail.com and one with tomtommy@gmail.com. Let's check it out in practice. We write where email like, and then in single quotes, we use the wildcard %sign and then gmail.com. We get James and Tom because both of their emails end in gmail.com. Now let's use the not like operator. Let's write the SQL query, select all from staff, where email not like m 3 times underscore dot %sign at %sign.com. That underscore sign we just typed is used for exactly one character. After the letter M, we have 3 underscore signs, and that means that the email address we're looking for must start with M and have exactly 3 characters after it. It must then have a period. But after that, the %sign means that it can have any number of characters between the period and the @ symbol. The final %sign means that it can have any number of characters between the @ symbol and the .com. As you see, Mary's email and Michael's email both fit the criteria, but because we're using not like, the email addresses that match the criteria are excluded. The rows that will be included are highlighted. So as a result, we get 3 rows, James Davis, Tom, and James Baker. Now let's practice what we've learned. We changed like to not like, and we changed the pattern. The email needs to start with the letter M followed by 3 characters, then a period, then any number of characters, then the @ symbol, then any number of characters, and then .com. And we get the results we wanted, James, Tom, and James. So everything worked. Finally, we're going to learn 2 more operators, is not null and is null. Suppose we want to select all the rows with last name not null. To do this, we write select all from staff, where last name is not null. So all the rows will be selected except for Tom, because his last name is null. Now it's time for practice. We type where last name is not null. And we get all the employees except for poor Tom. And if we run this command, where last name is null, only Tom will be selected. We change it to is null. And Tom appears because his last name is null. So now we know all the operators which are used after the keyword where. That's it for this video. Catch you on the flip side.